online to learn how to use it.
That'll help.
Yeah. I guess you don't have as much need in your business to do it.
Well, I'm really been retired for about 16 years. So I'm not I have a business, but I'm not active in it anymore.
Oh, well, great. That means you have time to join us and do
Yeah, that do fun things like that and
fun
meaningful.
things like
I'm
that.
enjoying it.
Yeah.
I hated missing the discussion last week. I'd like to have heard it.
Oh, it would, they are always good. I guess you can go back and see it on YouTube.
Yeah, he said, can you do that now, you think? Is it
Uh,
available
it
now?
should be available. Well, no, not now, after class.
I mean, not now. I mean, but
Yeah,
if I went back after the class.
right, right. It should be. Good morning, Laura. How are you? Oh, you're muted, honey. We don't mean to distract you, Laura, while you're going somewhere.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Can
Mm.
you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm driving.
Yes. I don't mind if you drive because you're not supposed to be taking notes. But when my students would drive during class, that would make me feel
Oh,
guilty.
yeah, they shouldn't do that.
No,
And
because
I don't
right.
know how I can't seem to get the picture of everybody. Your video and stuff. All right. Well, let me see.
Well,
Huh.
you're supposed to be watching the road, not watching.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm just gonna that's fine.
Safety first, please. Please.
We have a few more minutes as far as my clock says.
Okay.
Good.
So how many people have been coming to this roughly? I guess it differs every week.
It does differ each week, but sometimes we're as many as 9 or 10, and it usually is about a core group of 6 or so.
Oh, cool.
If we count Howard and Suzanne who share a screen because they are on the same computer,
Yeah.
it's 6 or 7. But I think people sometimes tell the rabbi they can make it or they can't make it. But the core people are usually me, Laura, sister TK, Margaret is usually here. It depends on who's traveling out of town. That's really the only reasonable excuse to.
So how long have these Zoom meetings been going on?
We have been doing it um, for a couple of years now.
Oh, okay.
And we've done different things. This is the first time we're looking at this book that covers the Parsha of the week. But in the summer, last summer, we had a different topic. We had a different book. Rabbi Nori, when he was here, used a different book. So it's a participant group. The participants make the decisions about what to do, and I think that's really nice.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So stick with us for the summer and add your port about what you'd like to talk about.
Okay, okay, I'll keep that in mind. I didn't know how it all worked yet, but I'm enjoy reading the book and listening to everybody.
Oh, great, great. And
each little lesson is nice and short, so that makes it easy.
that's nice. And also, one of the things that has always been pointed out to me is that he doesn't always talk about the main point of the Parsha as far as I remember it or as I read.
Mhm.
So, good morning, Ellen. Nice to see
Morning.
you.
How are you?
Eddie, you too. Good to see you. Eddie's in a different room. Notice the new paint.
Hey, this is the first time in 2 years I've been able to sit in my office. There's a floor in here. So
No, it's great. And now we get to look at all your artwork, or at least some of it on the walls. So it's good. Yeah. Well, maybe my background won't look the same in a year or so, too. Maybe not 2 years, but. Well, we are at 12:01 and Margaret is just joining us, so we're in good shape. And I'll try to keep my eyes out for everybody else. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, let's start with this parsha. If you read only Rabbi Sacks, you don't know what this parsha is about. This this parsha, Bamidbar, translates as in the wilderness, and the book that it's in is Numbers, and Numbers gives away more about what this parsha is about, and that's the census that God asked Moses to take. So the Israelite people are on their journey through the Sinai desert when Moses is instructed by God to make a census of the 12 tribes. And he counts 550,000 men of the age that made them possibly able to do military service between ages 20 and 60 years old. And there was a different count for the tribe of Levi because those are the ones that work in the sanctuary. For Levi, they counted 22,300 men. But please note, you know what point about this is going to really get my craw, and that is you're counting only the men? Why are we counting only the men? Well, the parsha takes place in the wilderness in the desert. And interestingly, or at least coincidentally, it's read on the Shabbat before Shavuos. And Shavuos celebrates getting the Torah, which happens on Mount Sinai. And we've already talked a little bit about the situation of getting the Torah on Mount Sinai. Remember, from my geologic perspective, it was the mountain and smoke and getting ready to erupt, and the mountains wreathed in those clouds of smoke and rumbling. But Sacks is making, for his point, a comparison of two journeys. The journey of Exodus, when they're leaving Egypt, and this journey in Numbers, where they're traveling to the promised land. And as he says, both trips have issues. The people are unhappy, the people are frustrated, the people are struggling with, where are we going to get water? Where are we going to get food? They have the issues of the golden calf. In this journey, they're dealing with the spies. So Sacks says it's easier. His point here is that it's easier to leave something that you know, to leave, than it is to go to an unknown. And he's touching a little bit on the fear of the unknown. And he wants to have, for his life-changing idea, how do you successfully journey to an unknown? Well, he gets to this, if your book is in front of you, on page 189. And on page 189, we're talking about, it's fairly close to the top of the page, talking about it's important to have a plan for your life, a roadmap for your life. And he says to be a Jew is to know that life is a journey. I don't know that that's limited to Jews. I think everyone understands that, or may know, or will come to the understanding that life is a journey. And the important part is to know what you're where you are traveling to, and not giving up. And so he says, leaving is easy, getting there is hard. When I read about the fact that plan, have a plan, work towards your plan will help you know where you're going and what you need to be doing there. It makes me think of an old Yiddish expression, an old Yiddish line. And I don't really know it in Yiddish. In Yiddish, it's man tracht und God lacht. What is it? All right, translate the Yiddish.
And proposes, God disposes.
Oh, well, that's one is I think the trocked and the locked makes sense. Man plans and God laughs. So here's a big contrast. It didn't fit Rabbi Sacks' purpose to include that, but he should have been, or he's obviously aware of the idea that man plans and God laughs. He has to be aware of that. It's inspired by Proverbs, a verse in Proverbs. Man plans his way, but God establishes his steps. So, or as Margaret said, man proposes and God disposes. Does that mean we can't make plans? Well, I think what it means is that you can't predict what's going to happen. Have the plans, let them guide you, but don't be surprised when things don't work out. Any comments on the comparison of man plans and God laughs, or man plans and God doesn't follow your plan? Any comments on that?
So I just want to say that is part of our Shacharit prayer every morning. Do you, Eddie? I don't know if you read the English, but Tanner Gale actually taught us how to sing that, and so I think as Jews, we understand that. I think some people in the Christian world, particularly, they always, that what I hear from that community is, God has a plan. We just don't really understand it. That kind of thing. And that's a little bit different from what our teachings are.
Diane, can you sing for us, please?
I would love to hear. Can you remember?
I've forgotten it. I walked around for years saying, people, do you remember when Tanner Gale? I'll think about it and I'll try it next time. But we did sing it in this class. You don't remember it, Barbara? Do you remember?
I don't remember it. I'm starting to feel really guilty because I took almost all those Wednesday classes from Cantor Gale, and I don't remember that part. And it's been a long time since I've been to the weekday Shachrit service, but I don't remember
where it is.
Where this is. Yeah, I don't remember. I have favorite things from the Wednesday weekday Shachrit service, such as I would think of my students all the time when they would cheat. And I would say to myself, do they think that God, who created eyes, ears, and hands, doesn't know that they just cheated? And this was just, my own way of thinking, oh, come on, don't you guys know you weren't supposed to have done that? But Eddie, do you know the section of Shachrit that she's referring to? No. Okay, Diane, also look that up for us. Or
I'm trying to think. I will let you know.
Good. Sacks used the example, speaking of students, to dream of what their future might be, and that the dream would show them a destination, point out the direction of their journey. But I'm concerned about that. I think the problem with having a dream of a long-term goal doesn't come with instructions. That dream of your goal doesn't make it. How would you advise a person in that situation, Marvin?
Well, I was just thinking about my own life, and when I read that and thinking how much of it was kind of, there was a sort of a kind of a little bit of a structure, but there was a whole lot of, twists and turns and changes from what I had anticipated, and maybe I didn't dream strongly enough,
but there's a dream, or there's a difference between having a dream and having a roadmap. I mean, I dreamed I'd marry a nice Jewish doctor. I did. He just didn't turn out to be the right kind of doctor. But and he's in the other room with the door closed. He can't. So we can.
So you guys remember the sign? I don't see it anymore. It said, "He who fails to plan plans to fail," and then the fail was dropping off because he didn't. So I don't think it is that you have a plan or a dream that is fulfilled. It is that you look at life as worthwhile enough to have some sort of a goal. It's not just going to happen to you, but you have some intention of where you want to be. And whoever dreamed that I would want to be in Birmingham, Alabama for 50 plus years? Never.
Well, what about now, though, Diane? What I thought about after reading this is, I know what my plan was 44 or 45 years ago, but do we have life plans now? So the last page, I started trying to write out what some of my life goals are, because I do think we still need some. We still need some direction.
I agree.
Good comment, Eddie.
Excellent comment, Eddie. I really appreciate that. And we'll have that as a little homework assignment. And then we can share, because I'm sure y'all will think of things that I didn't consider that I put. Sacks does give some guidance for life planning. Yes, I'm the one who's complaining it doesn't come. You can have your dreams and it doesn't come with instructions, but he says particularly be active. Don't just sit around and let things happen to you. Let the things that happen to you, those outside factors, help you to say, I'm gaining from this, I'm not. And there will be all kinds of things that happen as you're moving along this path. He points out, bottom of page 189, he's still same page. He talks about, let's see. Letting things happen is passive. It means that you are letting outside factors determine the course of your life. Outside factors will always affect it. However, when you know what you want to achieve, everyone's subjected to unexpected circumstances, wrong turns, bad decisions, setbacks, failures. But if you know where you want to be, you'll end up and back on track. I'm going to mention a pretty small example from my own life. This happened when I was 12 or 13. It was Friday afternoon, and we always had Shabbat dinner guests when I was a kid. But that particular day, it seemed like a fairly large crowd was coming for dinner, and it was a big deal. So here we are. Dinner was probably 6:30, 7. I know it was light outside, so by 4 o'clock it was light, but it might have been sundown was going to be after 7:30, something like that. And we're talking a small town in New Jersey. I'm 12 or 13 years old. I have a little sister. She still rode a tricycle. And I thought, I'm going to ride the tricycle. And I tried to ride it standing up. And so I got across the driveway and going back to, I fell off and I broke my arm, compound fracture. Okay. So obvious compound fracture. My mom was a nurse. She looked at me struggling to get in the back door and she said, "Oh, you broke your arm." I said, "Yeah, I know that," because my arm is like in hump, it's totally misaligned. And my mom abandoned dinner and took me to see 2 doctors. And in the small town where I grew up, there wasn't an orthopedics guy available. We could have gone 2 hours to go find an orthopedics guy. I couldn't see one until Monday. So my mom and the doctor that we ended up seeing decided, well, let's give her a temporary cast over the weekend. Monday, we'll see the orthopedics guy. He'll take off the cast. He'll reset the arm. He'll do whatever. And the whole thing took about 2.5 or 3 hours. I don't know how much was left for dinner preparation. But we had the Shabbat dinner with all the company, and it was a bit changed, but it was a Shabbat dinner, and I didn't have to do dishes because I had a complete cast up and around my arm. But we had this Shabbat dinner when we got back. And I think that this is an example of having the long range plan, which was to celebrate Shabbat with others, but to celebrate Shabbat and give the idiot kid a temporary fix for the arm. On Monday, when we went to the orthopedics guy said, "No, that's good enough. We could put her in for an operation, re-break everything, and start over again. But functionally, she'll be okay." But I think that my mother's goal, my family's goal, and I certainly would rather have had Shabbat dinner than have anything really big deal happen to me that night. To celebrate Shabbat, to observe Shabbat, was the right long-term goal. Maybe celebrating Shabbat is a good lifetime goal, is a good thing to keep in mind. But that was a wrong turn. That was an accident. That was a setback. But if you know where you want to be and what you want to do, it worked for our family that day.
Yeah, I think this is Martin, but I think, God made it clear in this writing that we all should have a destination. We have to have a place to go. And you had Shabbat dinner, and even though you had your arm that broke, I hope it's okay now. Hold it up so I can make sure it's okay.
Oh, actually, I don't think you can see both of it's twisted. I can't put it in the same position. After that, I couldn't play piano. Maybe that was a great excuse not to have to continue with piano lessons. I switched to something. I played clarinet after that. But and for the longest time, I had a lot of ache and pain from arthritis when the weather changed. But now I've outgrown that. I don't necessarily notice it. And years later, maybe 35 years later, an orthopedics guy suggested, well, we could go in and re-break it. Let's keep what we have. But you're right, Martin. Even Sacks says, set your objectives in advance and don't forget them. And Sacks kept his life goals. Where did he keep them? You read that part. This is not really a quiz. Where did he keep it? In a pocket notebook in his pocket. And those were his long-term goals written in this pocket notebook. And they were always reminders of where he was going, what he was traveling to.
Barbara,
Ellen.
I don't know where to put my list in this discussion, but I was shocked but not surprised really to find in a diary I began to keep when I was 14. At 15, I took a page and made a list of what I was going to do at each interval. And it's clear enough I was going to go to college, but I added I was going to graduate school. And I added that I wanted to travel in Europe. All of this against the background of one year, which was chosen to be the one in which I would marry Ben Erdrich. We had begun dating at 14 and 15, and we went on and on and on. But that was always not that he was exactly my goal, but he was there. And that went well until one of the last years of graduate school. My grandmother wrote me a letter and said, "Darling, I know you love what you're doing, and I'm sure you do it well, but there's nothing like having a family. And he's not going to wait forever." And it was not too long since I was now 25 in that year that I had predicted. I came home and married Ben. But I did not want to live in Birmingham. We did for a while. Then we spent 20 years in Washington. Then we came back. But it was always a kind of vision of what I thought was an ideal life, probably strongly influenced by my mother, who felt like a caged bird in Birmingham Mountain Brook society. I knew that I felt like I was out of the cage when we went to Washington. I could say what I wanted, do what I wanted. I could say it to anyone. I was no longer afraid or persecuted for it. But I don't know what to do with the list now. We're very close to the end.
Well, Eddie didn't exactly say where he was putting his list, but we have all this blank space on the page. Eddie, good. So I'm putting mine there. Ellen, when you were putting your diary together ages ago, I missed this part. Did you say when you would be marrying Ben, or just that you
exactly?
Oh, I didn't know. I thought you had just said. Oh, that's great.
I was the Southern girls that I knew. They were all married, all had children, and we got married. I wasn't going to do it.
Well, when Sacks talks about his life goals, he says he was guided by what God wanted from him. I don't know that that's going to apply to all of us. We don't have that relationship with God. I don't. We might think about some of that, but I certainly don't feel that I can rely on my understanding of what I think God wants from me. He continues to talk about it was an issue for the Israelites that they didn't have a long-term goal for their lives. And they got caught up in their fears and trials and tribulations as they're going through the wilderness in the desert. As I said before, they needed a food supply. They could have, well, what did they get for a food supply? They were concerned about being hungry, about why did you take us out of Egypt to make us starve here in the desert? Okay, test question number 2. Where did they get their food? A, ShopRite. B, Publix. C, Amazon, Walmart delivery.
It rained manna every night.
It did, so they didn't have to worry about that. And so once that happened 5 times in a row, did they hush up? No, they still had other things to complain about. And as a geologist, one of my areas that they complained about that ticks me off is the water. They needed water. There were all kinds of problems with the water. The first time they needed water, God helped them out. He told Moses, take your stick, strike this rock, and you'll get water. The second time they were fetching to Moses about, there's no water, we need water. Then what happened? We've been through this. What happened? Moses went out, and instead of politely saying to the rock, oh, hello, Madam Rock, please give us water. He went with what worked before, struck the rock, and got himself in all kinds of trouble.
So I think, we always read these stories and we always talk about how the Jews complained about this and they complained about that and they complained about the other thing. And of course, that's all true. But the other side of that is that they had problems to solve. They had the problem of what to eat. You can't eat sand. They had the problem of what to drink. You can't drink sand. You can't drink rocks. And so I don't know that their complaints are always their problems to be solved. They're not always quite as negative as they're always, put out to be. There is the aspect of it when they say, we should have stayed in Egypt and eaten, I don't know what, oysters and champagne or whatever they were eating.
Not kosher.
No, they didn't know about kosher yet when they were in Egypt. They have all the oysters they wanted.
So there's that sort of niggling kind of aspect of it, but they are solving problems that allow them to continue on the journey.
And I get the impression that maybe Sacks would have thought it was more useful to them if they didn't complain about it, that they just thought, faith in God, this is all going to work out. I'm going to the promised land, or we're going to the promised land. And he makes that pretty clear, that they should have planned better for how things could be in the promised land and ignored their day-to-day issues. At least that's the interpretation that I got from what Sacks had to say. They weren't focused on the real goal, which was a successful life in the promised land. So you're right, Margaret. They managed to get there, and they had to solve a lot of problems along the way. And there probably were more daily problems than just food and water. There's which brings us to one idea about why did they count men? Men are valuable, or men of the age to bear arms. There were times when they needed protection from whatever, whether it's wild beasts or protection from populations. That sort of suggests a reason for that. But they didn't stay in Egypt. They went out on this wilderness journey, and then they had to deal with it. So I'd like to talk about his life-changing idea. Somebody ready to read us the life-changing idea in this chapter? We have somebody has their book out. Page 191, my notes say.
I got it.
Okay,
remember your destination. This will help you distinguish between an opportunity to be seized and a temptation to be resisted.
Okay. I have questions about that. How can you distinguish between a temptation and an opportunity? How do you know how do you know if what happens is an opportunity or if it's a temptation? How can you tell?
It all depends on how you define your opportunities, which is what is your plan. So, I mean, there's lots of temptations that can be an opportunity that you don't want to take.
Oh, so you're saying the one that you think it is better work with your life plan.
Well, so Martin, in your work, I think he has set some goals for, or help people to set goals on what they're trying to reach, and that is about their good health. And so there are many obstacles that come in the way of us having good health habits, and those are pretty obvious. They tell me I need to do certain exercises for my knee before I even get out of the bed, and sometimes it's just not something that fits in with my life plan. I got to get to Minion on time, so I have to make that choice. Either get up earlier or suffer the consequences. So some things are more obvious than others, but there are many times when people stumble upon an opportunity that isn't part of their plan. So so you have to make the best of the decisions that you make.
I am reminded of an example from my own life. You're going to say TMI, you're learning too much about my past. But now we move on to being in college and finishing the first semester of freshman year, where I had gone to college as a pre-med / French major. And I met this wonderful guy, and he was my chem and lab partner. And at the end of, he hadn't enjoyed chem lab. And I don't know what he at that point was majoring in. But in the long run, he could major in whatever he wanted. He already had, he knew what his end goal was going to be, and that was to go work for his father's company. But I asked him, are you taking the second semester of chemistry? He said, no, I'm going to take geology. And I said, geology, funny thing, so am I, because I want to stay as lab partner. So I ran off, registered for geology, and initially it was a distraction. I just wanted to be his lab partner. We weren't boyfriend, girlfriend, or anything at that point, or really ever. We stayed really close friends. But the idea that I could take geology just to be with this guy could have been a distraction. I had room in my schedule. But at the end of the second term, I stayed with geology and let go the being the pre-med, because I really liked a lot about geology. So I think that answers my second question. Do distractions ever become opportunities? In my case, they did. But what's, when do distractions become opportunities, and how do you know the difference? I think that's a tough question to know.
I think often you know the difference in retrospect, and only, and some retrospect takes years.
Yeah. About having life goals, and we're all, as we said, writing out our life goals from now on, but do life goals change? Can life goals change over your life?
I'll be glad to speak to that a little bit. That's Martin, and I've had my father passed away when I was 17, and me and my brother were left with the business, and we've been partners for 50 years. And we started off in the credit clothing business, is where my father had a route, and he delivered papers when he was a young kid because the family was so poor. And so anyway, so Dave and I have been partners for 50 years, and we're in a credit clothing store. We ended up being in the rent to own business. We ended up being in the collection business. And I was the one that I like planning. David was a detailed person. I like doing all the plans and stuff. And I've always had a plan my entire life from when I went in my business, a business plan. And so many things happened on the way. When you've been in business, we're 89 years in business, but things happen all the time. But I always believed in having a plan to do, but that plan can change every day. You still have a long-term plan, but we've had things like they changed the tax law where we couldn't be in the credit clothing business. This goes back about 40 years. You're going to have to pay cash. If you have credit, it's going to be like they're paying cash from a tax purposes. I'm not going to get into all the detail of that, but it made it where we had to totally change our business. We started 2 new businesses within about 6 months because that one was going away, and we have young kids, and we had to make a living or whatever. But I've always believed in having a plan, because if you don't have a destination, you won't know when you fell off the plan or not. And when you do fall off the plan, you just go and make your new plan, because life changes so much. So just from a business standpoint, I got in the habit of planning. I do that in my personal life now that I'm retired, and I spend about 30 minutes every day, first thing in the morning, journaling in the areas that how I want my life to go. It doesn't ever necessarily work that way, like you said. You don't know what's going to happen, but I just was trained from a very young man to do that. And that's what kind of keeps me going and keeping me positive to always have a destination.
Right. And as you said, the destinations can change depending on what the outside world is doing. In your case, the tax law and things like that. Sacks says that his life goals didn't change. And I didn't know whether that meant that maybe his life goals were so loosely defined or so focused on what he thought God wanted him to do that it was easy, or that it was not something he needed to change on a short-term basis. And if we're going to follow that, his pattern, and this is probably what he told his students to do in terms of their dreams and where their dreams came. How do they know God's plan? I won't ask how Sacks knew it, because as I said, it's like he has a hotline, God. But how does the man in the street, woman in the street, the average person get that overarching plan?
I think, oh, sorry, Barbara.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I think you make a good point when you say how detailed the plan is, because I don't believe for a minute, and I don't remember what I read in there, but I don't believe for a minute that, when Sacks had his plan, he planned to be, the chief rabbi of, and I don't think, he may have planned to be a rabbi or planned to be a scholar or whatever he may have planned, but I don't know, it depends on, as I say, on how detailed you want your plan to be, how really closely your your accomplishments match that plan.
And in a sense, that brings us back to what Diane said before. She didn't plan where she was planning to geographically be, or the same with what Ellen had to say. And Margaret, maybe you planned 50 years ago to be in Birmingham.
Oh, absolutely. That was top of my list.
But your kid gets a job here, and here you are. And that's what happened to me. If you told me when I was growing up that I'd live in Birmingham and love it, I would have said, no way.
So in Rabbi Sacks's history, what I remember reading is that when he was a college student, he came to the U.S. and he wanted to meet with the Rebbe in New York, right?
Yeah.
And it was the Rebbe who influenced his decision on what it was he should do. He didn't have that plan until the Rebbe influenced him. And it was a chance meeting because there was a long line, and he somehow managed to make the meeting happen. Right. So it wasn't, he had someone challenge him, which for some of us is a great thing. All we need is a challenge.
Diane, does that mean I'm out of luck? The Rebbe's no longer with us?
No, I mean, different ones. I tell people all the time, I just gave up sugar. Noah said to me one Friday night, I don't eat dessert. I've given up sugar. I bet you can't give up sugar. And I picked my day, and I said, today, I'm not going to eat sugar. So there you go.
And that's on your list now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've fallen off a couple of times, but generally speaking, yeah.
Margaret, which goals do you go for first, the big picture or the specifics?
I would think that you go for the big picture and then the more specific,
and then fill in
the ones that you think will take you to get there. That's what I would think. My plan is to live 10 more years.
And your plan should be to live 10 more years happily.
Right. I was
Right.
happily and healthily and
Well,
still did, going to going to the J twice a week and all these kinds of
fun things.
It's Martin. I want to mention something that's kind of interesting. I was listening to a podcast. I listen to a lot of health podcasts and all different kinds of things. But this guy, the podcast was some guy was interviewing a 103-year-old man, and he was going through his 10-year plan with him. The 103-year-old man, and so he lives like he's going to live to 113. If he doesn't make it, basically said it's okay. I got to be on my plan as far as I can be. But I thought that was kind of cute and interesting.
That is something hard to reckon with, because I have some things on my list that doesn't make sense to do them now, but I really need to do them. I need to plan to do them anyway. If they don't happen, they don't happen, but I'm going to do it.
Good.
I'm kind of between Barbara and Martin. I was a biology major, got a French minor, and I also started running my dad's business when I was 16, one of them, because he just didn't have the energy or the health to do it. And so I had this plan to go to med school. And then my dad got sick and I took care of him for a year. And he changed my plan. He said, no, you need to go back and do what you always wanted to do, not what people have expectations for you to do. So he just hounded me the last few months of his life to go to architecture school. He said, you want to do that since you were 6 years old. Why aren't you doing that? Don't do what your mom wanted you to do. So
Martin, when you say your dad died at 17, when you were 17.
Oh, when I was 17, yeah.
You were 17. So had you, I assume you had planned to go to college?
Yeah, I did go to college, and I went to the University of Florida, and I came back to the University of Alabama to kind of be with my mother. She was so upset with it. So I transferred, and then David was in the business for a year. And so I would go and help David. He was totally responsible for it. I wasn't in the business yet. So, and, I would go and be with my mother, and I'd go help him, and, I had a girlfriend, and that just kind of kept me busy. But I wasn't in the business yet, but.
Okay, so you changed your plan, Barbara changed her plan, Eddie finally got to his plan. So now, is it Ellen? No, you didn't change?
Well, what changed was, well, first of all, Ben was the first Jew, the second Jew elected to the, federal system. And that was a shock. And just getting removed from Birmingham was like being born again. And oddly enough, I was born in Washington. My parents had, while they spent their brief years there, they had made friends. Many of those friends were still alive and very hospitable, and it was wonderful. So now I have two homes.
And Morgan, what about your plan? Did you change your plan?
No, I know my mother.
It depends at what age. I mean, my plan when I was, at a certain age, 12 or something, I remember our family was being interviewed on TV. And I said that I wanted to be a doctor. And I was reading a lot of, doctor-related books and endocrinology and stuff like that. But then two things happened. First of all, my father died when I was 14. So all of us, all of his children, in some sense, followed in his footsteps, in that each of us picked an aspect of the work he did and followed through. So that changed my plan. And also the fact that I went to Swarthmore College. Swarthmore is such a hard college. And you get so much work. It's just awful. And I had, kind of breezed through high school, even though it was a pretty good high school. So I was like gobsmacked, got terrible terrible grades in the science things that I took freshman year, and thought, geez, maybe I can't do this after all. And so all of those different things sort of moved me from medicine into psychology.
So I just find it interesting because I do know so many people who did have to change their plans. And I'm sorry, Martin, you were about to say something. I'm acting like I'm conducting this.
Okay, but my goal was to be a professional baseball player.
Oh,
Father
of course.
I had that goal too, but
I was not capable of it, but that was my dream always, and so I ended up being a bill collector instead because my father died. So that's what happens. And I tell you,
Otherwise,
let me tell you
otherwise
one
we'd
thing.
be collecting your cards, right, Martin?
Right, right. One other thing I want to discuss. My mother, Sylvia Shearer, who probably y'all don't know or whatever, she died many years ago. But she had a plan for her three children, and she's the one that really was successful with it. She said that she told me this my entire life, and my sister her entire life, and my brother his entire life. You're going to marry a nice Jewish girl, and it ad nauseum until that's what we all did. We we all went by. We were scared not to do it. So anyway, that was the message I got when I was a little kid. It's worked out pretty well.
So that worked out. That worked out. If I can take a few minutes, I'd like to talk about the census issue. I think we've done a great job talking about planning and having those plans change and renewing those plans or adapting those plans as we change. And if y'all would turn in your homework tomorrow when you come to class, we'll work that out. But it's on my mind to talk just a little bit about Moses' census. And as I complained before, that he only counted men. And he only counted men of a certain age and certain abilities. And in doing that, it doesn't give us a true sense of the population. It doesn't tell us anything about a huge segment of the population. He doesn't talk about the minors. He doesn't talk, or the people less than 20. He doesn't talk about the elderly, the ones over 60. He doesn't talk about those unable to bear arms because maybe some physical disability, or even, I guess, maybe a mental disability if it was obvious. And he doesn't talk about women. They're just skipped in the census of this Parsha. And what does that say about those people and the value of those people in that community? Are they of less importance and therefore they weren't counted? Do they not matter and then they weren't counted? And is that where some of society's ideas about who the boss is, like, you do everything the men in your family tell you, your brothers, your fathers, your whatever, the men in your family are the ones who direct? Well, it takes us back to something really early on that wasn't considered in this census. All of us are made in the image of God, and we're meant to treat each other equally because of that. And then you skip this entire segment of the population. And I think it's worth it for us to talk about or to think about how do we take this and apply it to our own lives today? And no, I'm not going to go work for the federal census, but what do we do about inclusion in our own communities? At Temple Bethel, who counts, or how do we count Bethel? Basically, we count them as family units. We don't say we have this number of adults and this number of minors and this number of kids. We talk about a family unit. So you might have parents and 6 kids, parents and 1 kid, just parents, single people as members. We do member units. Okay, that's the logistics of it. But how about inclusion? How do we include Because if we don't include, then we're not making it possible for everyone to have access within the community. Are we really including in our census, in our community, people with differences, such as somebody that needs assistance with Hebrew? How do we include them as much as possible? Well, I'm happy to say that we now have fully transliterated Sidurim that are out and available. And the last couple of weeks that they've been available, the rabbi makes a big deal of saying, if you would like to follow along and your Hebrew's not strong, pick up one of the Sidurim by the door. And it's a spiral bound Sidur that they put together. How do we work to include people that have physical disabilities, vision disabilities? Well, I'm proud to say that at one point, Bethel had large print Sidurim. I actually don't know about the Chumash, whether we had large print Chumash, but I actually don't know now whether we have, just in thinking about this, do we still have, or do we have up-to-date large print copies of today, the Sidur we use today? Anybody know that? Eddie, we do?
I have one. I ordered one because I needed it. So I use the large print.
You use the large print because you
The
got
daily prayer book, because it's easier for me to read the Hebrew. I could read the English, but I need it for the Hebrew.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think we are inclusive, Barbara. I mean, if you come to Minion, there is always somebody there to help people.
Absolutely. Minion is beautiful that way. Minion is beautiful that way.
And there's that big bowl of some kind of hearing aid.
Yeah.
By the
door.
We used to have those too. I don't know where they are.
Oh, they're outside. They're outside the main sanctuary, at least in the door that I go in, which is the one you go in too. There's a bowl of them outside. I don't see people using them. I think a lot of people have their own hearing assistive devices. What about those people who have less background in Judaism and need education? Well, classes like this or other opportunities for learning. It'd be nice if we had a mentor program where this weekend we're going to celebrate new people new to the Jewish community. There were a lot of people who converted this year. And it would be nice if we had service buddies or something like that. Here's the page, here's what we're doing, here's when you stand up, that kind of thing. Learning differences. I think we think of that mostly in the religious school. How skilled are our teachers in the religious school at dealing with those who have learning disabilities?
And Barbara, how are you doing with your wheelchair?
I just didn't get to that example yet.
Oh, okay.
When I go to service, if I go to a meeting at Temple, I'll often not take the wheelchair. But if I'm going to services and then I want to go up and go to lunch and everything, that's a problem. I'm not the only person in a wheelchair, though. There's a young man who has made great comments at services or has been invited to participate. His name's Ezra. He is also in a wheelchair. Well, I've not seen him have the opportunity to have an aliyah. But if I'm in my wheelchair, I go down to the front and Bethel, Josh Ivker will bring the Torah down. And I've seen him do that for other people in the congregation, or the Josh or the rabbi or someone, bring the Torah to those people. And that works for me. And it's unfortunate that we don't have a way to get, up on the bima, approach the ark, anything like that. But it works for me, and it's great that Bethel is willing to do that. So yeah, we need to provide access to people who can't step up to the bima. Or sometimes I see people struggling to step up to the bima. And in that case, it doesn't embarrass me. I mean, obviously, I use a wheelchair most of the time when I'm at services. And I'm not upset by it, but I'm disappointed that we either can't afford to find a solution. We used to have a wheelchair lift, or at least, you know, a little elevator lift outside of the sanctuary, and you go in behind where the rabbi sits and everything. And it became non-functional, and we ended up getting rid of it. But yeah, I think it's important in terms of inclusion to deal with all of these issues. I'm sure we could go on through our list of, you know, people who are different and therefore need to be included. But if you just go back to the idea of we're all made in the image of God, everybody matters. And we need to have whatever's necessary in our synagogue community to include everyone that wants to be an active participant, so that everybody has a chance to make their contribution to the community. And I won't say that my contribution is having an aliyah, but sometimes if there aren't very many people there, everybody gets to do something. Everybody. And so all I hear from the Bima in the announcements from, let's say that's from the board or from the management, is please introduce yourself to the people you don't know. And I think that does a lot for community. It really does help people. So I apologize for that bit of a soapbox. Tell me, Abby, for Minyan, isn't the fact that it's a smaller group that the regulars really watch out for each other, and it really is.
You know, one problem we have at Minyan is we have some people who consider themselves to be Jews who may not by religious law qualify. And it's very painful when people are going around the room counting and they're saying, oh, we don't have 10 people, and we have these people sitting there and there's obviously 10 people in the room. And that really irritates me. That I know we have to follow that, but I think your intent should matter too. And if your intent is that you're a Jew, you should be counted. But I'm in the minority on that one.
I know that that's true for Or Hadash congregation. Or Hadash is, they're not Reconstructionists, they're something. But
humanistic.
Humanistic. Yes,
Humanistic.
Thanks, TK. Humanistic. My understanding of their congregation is that if you say you belong, you belong. Or I don't know to that congregation, but to that group of Jewish people.
Yes.
Am I right there, TK?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, but please, Eddie, don't start going to Minyan with them. Just that'll drop the number even lower.
Well, I'm working on that situation too. I mean, I always tell people, quit saying that, you know. There are 2 people that come regularly that are in that group, and it just really upsets me when I hear people say that. So,
were they in the conversion class, or can you
no,
say?
one of them is going to take the conversion class, and there's someone else who's a spouse, and she's been a spouse of a Jewish person for 30 years, and I don't think she converted, but as far as I'm concerned, she counts, you know.
Well, what I like about my son's congregation, it's a very small congregation where he's in grad school, and it's not affiliated. So I guess they have a number of different, or they can make their own rules. And I think the rule at Bethel is that people on live stream don't count at all. And if they have 8 people and I'm watching, or 3 other people are watching from home, they'll count. All the people on Zoom get counted too. And that's their way of working.
We did it during COVID, but now the rabbi says that they have to be able to communicate back with you. So if you can get one person on the phone, you can count them.
Yeah, Bernard has called me on the phone. It's been a while, but he has called me on the phone when there wasn't a Minyan.
Maybe it works for my son's congregation because it's Zoom, not live stream, and the screen shows in the sanctuary or in the chapel. So yeah, well, I'm glad to know that they did that during COVID. I think that counts, because I remember a rabbi saying something. have to be able to look them in the eye. And there wasn't Rabbi Hankin, it was something else.
And we also had where you could have an aliyah. Everybody did their aliyah from the floor during COVID. They didn't come up on the bema, which I do think we need that opportunity now.
I haven't had an aliyah in the chapel yet, so maybe I'll force. I mean, I do feel like I'm the spokesperson for people with physical limitations, just because I'm willing to say, look, you guys, there are a lot of ways.
Railings on the steps to the bema would be good.
Yes. Or do you mean more than one railing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can do one step and then give me 10 minutes. I can do another step.
We do accommodate. Hey, Howard, we do accommodate in the sanctuary.
How do you
for
accommodate?
Aliyahs on the floor.
And who do you accommodate?
Anybody that needs it. We had it was an 8th Mazer. They came first Shabbat and they did the Aliyah right from their seats.
Yeah, yeah.
So we do make those accommodations.
I do think it's very good. I think Bethel, the people at Bethel who are doing the service are working on it. But there may be a number of people who don't know that will happen. And I think we need to be real obvious about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to bring that up with the ritual committee.
Exactly, Eddie. Exactly.
That's a good point.
Thank you all for being here today. I know I'm a poor substitute for Rabbi Henkin, but I haven't heard stories about Rabbi Henkin's girlfriend in his case when he was in college. But
I have.
You have. No, I really appreciate your contributions today, and I appreciate your willingness to listen to my discussion of how census needs to count everyone, and let's work on our life plans for the time we have left. And Howard, turn in your homework next time we have class. Thank you all. Come back.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
Pleasure to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, TK. And Margaret and Ellen. And now Eddie's left. Thank you.